Hello and welcome back to Uncle Venom's Books and Whiskey. I'm Ron Rutstein, also known as Uncle Venom, your host today. I know it's been a couple weeks since I've been back, and that's because I happen to have back surgery, and between that and the painkillers I was on, I was not allowed to drink. They don't like you mixing alcohol and painkillers, so I kind of did what my doctors told me to do and adhered to that policy. However, I'm now allowed to drink a little bit, and I'm back to my responsible drinking. Today, I'm going to be talking about Ardbeg and Islay whiskey and mysteries written by John Franklin Bardin. Be getting into that in just a minute. This pairing was chosen by author Simon Winchester, who I ran into at a local bookstore a week or so before my surgery, where my wife works. Had a little conversation with him and told him what I was doing with this channel and my other YouTube channel, and he is a fan of whiskey, and we got to talking, and I asked him what his favorite whiskeys were, and he said he likes the smoky, peaty whiskeys of Islay, and I asked him which pairing he would particularly like. I told him about some of the ones that I've done so far, and he suggested Ardbeg as one of his favorite whiskeys, and the mysteries of John Franklin Bardin. John Franklin Bardin wrote 3 mysteries, which are slightly bizarre and a little bit ahead of their time. These were written in the late 40s after World War II, and the bizarreness of the plots are ahead of their time. And they're not perfect mysteries. They are very well written, but there are some weaknesses in the storylines that we would not expect from a more modern mystery. But they are intriguing stories. And the second one has Ardbeg mentioned in it. But it's the first one that I'm going to focus on when we get to talking about the books. And we're going to be unboxing here the Ardbeg and Oa Islay Single Malt Scotch Whiskey. Packed very nicely. And a lovely bottle. Nice box with a little description on the back. We'll get to that in a minute. And we'll pop open the cork. Ooh, now that's got a lot of smoke. This is called Anoa, the ultimate Islay single malt Scotch whiskey, non-chill filtered. Ardbeg is known as being the smokiest of the Islay whiskies, and this is described as smoky, sweet, singularly rounded. To read from the back of the box, it shows us a map of Islay. The weather conditions would be more extreme were it not for the shelter of the Mull of Oa. The distillery is sheltered from the harsh excess of the mighty Atlantic by the rounded Oa, the inspiration for the outstanding Ardbeg an Oa. Like the peninsula that shares its name, Ardbeg an Oa is particularly rounded, due in no small part to time spent in the gathering vat. Here we marry together whiskey from several different casks, including new charred oak, PX sherry, and first fill bourbon. Here they become fully familiar with each other. I would hope so. The result is a dram with smoky power, mellowed by delectable smooth sweetness. Hallmark Ardbeg peat, dark chocolate, and aniseed are wrapped in smooth silky butterscotch, black pepper, and clove before rising to an intense crescendo of flavor. Ardbeg an Oa is non-chill filtered with a strength of 46.6 alcohol by volume to retain maximum flavor, more body and depth. With water, A little cloudiness may occur, which is perfectly natural. And you can decide if you want to add a little water to release the flavor or not. Now you can smell the peatiness that goes along with the smokiness as compared to a Lagavulin, which is definitely more of a straight smokiness. Very nice. The peat and the smoke blend beautifully. There is a hint of sweetness that I like very much in this. I definitely get that hint of a black pepper in my mouth afterwards. This, as always, is an excellent, excellent whiskey. The complexity of flavor gives you something to... It's almost like you can focus on a different aspect of the flavor each time you sip the whiskey. Yeah, you don't get the distinct flavor of each of the casks like you would if they were just stored or aged in like a sherry cask, where you definitely get a sherry flavor. Here you've got those different casks that just are blended together beautifully and definitely provide a unique flavor that you would not get without putting these together. Excellent. Excellent. I'm not going to add water to that. I don't feel it's necessary. It is a little stronger. So if you plan on drinking a little more than that, you might want to add a little splash of water so that it doesn't hit you quite as quickly. All right, we're going to move on to John Franklin Bardin. John Franklin Bardin wrote 3 novels in the late 1940s, 3 mysteries. They are compiled here in a single omnibus by Penguin in the Penguin Crime series. I don't believe they're still in print. I picked this up online. As I said, this was recommended to me by Simon Winchester. My favorite Simon Winchester book is The Professor and the Madman, which is about the compiling of the Oxford English Dictionary. Brilliant, delightful, funny, sick story. The madman of the title is someone who is criminally insane, but who contributed quite a bit to the Oxford English Dictionary while he was in prison. It's quite a story, very enjoyable to read, and like I said, he was mad, but I'm getting off subject here. We're talking about John Franklin Bardin. He wrote only 3 novels, and then gave up his career as a writer. The one I'm going to talk about today is The Deadly Percheron, which is the first of the 3 in this collection. Jacob Blunt was my last patient. He came into my office wearing a scarlet hibiscus in his curly blonde hair. He sat down in the easy chair across from my desk and said, "Doctor, I think I'm losing my mind. Crazy people see things, don't they? Things that really aren't there. Hallucinations are a common symptom of mental disorder. A person who's mentally ill often lives in a world of his own imagining, an unreal world, he withdraws completely from reality. "That's me," says Jacob. "I'm nuts. Thank God it isn't really happening." Jacob Blunt thinks he's crazy. He thinks he's lost his mind. He has leprechauns giving him tasks to perform. He has to wear a flower in his hair, but a particular flower. A leprechaun tells him which flower he's going to wear in his hair, and he has to hunt down that particular flower. On this particular day, he has to wear a hibiscus. On a different day, it might be a different flower. At the end of the week, he gets $10 from the leprechaun. Another leprechaun gives him $10 worth of quarters to distribute to people on the street or wherever. And he gets $10 for himself at the end of the week. And another leprechaun pays him $10 a week to go to specific places at specific times and whistle melodies. It could be at a concert at Carnegie Hall, where one shouldn't be whistling melodies to other things that are not being performed. And he tries to do this as unobtrusively as possible. He doesn't need the money. He's got a lot of money. His father left him a fortune. But he feels an obligation because the leprechauns trust him. But at the same time, he thinks he's crazy. But clearly, he has the $10 in quarters that were given to him by one leprechaun. So he's not sure if he's crazy or not. So he takes George Matthews, the psychiatrist, out for a drink that night to meet one of the leprechauns. And hopefully, Dr. Matthews will be able to tell him whether he's crazy or not. The leprechaun is not pleased that Jacob brought someone with him to meet him. And as it turns out, Dr. Matthews says that he's not a leprechaun, that he's merely a dwarf. And he explains that leprechauns are larger when they're born in America. American leprechauns are bigger and better. But now, Jacob no longer has quarters to distribute. He has to distribute Percherons, horses. And that night, he has to deliver a Percheron to a specific person. And he agrees to do it. Dr. Matthews clearly says that this is a real person who is asking him to do these things. Outside, he has a truck with a Percheron on it for him to deliver. And it is rather bizarre, and he recommends that he not do this, but he feels an obligation, Jacob feels an obligation to perform this task. Dr. Matthews goes home, and in the middle of the night, he gets a call from a friend of Jacob's, whom he had met earlier that day with Jacob before they went out for the drinks, and finds out that Jacob is accused of the murder of the woman to whom he was supposed to deliver the Percheron. And the girl asks him to come down to the police station and please explain to the policeman that it probably wasn't Jacob who actually killed this woman. From there, the story gets more and more bizarre. When he goes down to the police station, Dr. Matthews discovers that the person who is now claiming to be Jacob is not the person that he met previously. But he doesn't tell the police officer this, as this Jacob is then relinquished to the custody of the psychiatrist. Then the psychiatrist wakes up months later with a different name in a mental hospital where no one will believe that he is actually Dr. George Matthews. So he has to go through and pretend that he is John Brown, whom they think he is, a vagrant, a street person, possible schizophrenic, and eventually he convinces them that he is a schizophrenic because they wouldn't believe that he was George Matthews, and is released and given a job, and he has to try and piece together his life that he doesn't remember from the time that he was at the police station picking up the fake Jacob Blunt, although we don't know which is the real and which is the fake, until he has regained who he is in the psychiatric hospital. It's a bizarre story. The police believe that George Matthews is dead, that he committed suicide possibly. His body was recovered from the East River. They believe that his wife has left and gone to Chicago to be with her parents, grieving for the loss of her husband. He's not sure who or what he is, what was done to him. He has a hideous scar across his face that he didn't used to have. The bizarre turn of events that takes place makes for a very good psychological thriller. It was quite an enjoyable read. It's a short novel, 200 pages, so it goes quite quickly. I have yet to read the other two that are in the collection, but I think I'm going to enjoy them as well. Again, light reads, something to enjoy with a glass of whiskey, and something to take you back to a post-World War II time that was maybe a little less complicated than things are now, when people reacted a little more openly to seeing a man with a scar across his face, to a story that's just a wee bit bizarre. And what about that damn horse? Thank you for joining me at Uncle Venom's Books and Whiskey. Please hit the like and subscribe to help out the channel. And remember to drink responsibly and read irresponsibly. Thank you again.